All right, y'all. So Americans are not playing around anymore when it comes to our healthcare system. This poll number, which I'm about to show you here about Luigi Mangione, is wild. This is wild. Here we go. Look at this. This is from Ken Klibenstein. 69% of Americans blame CEO murder on U.S. healthcare system. New poll shows Luigi Mangione's anger shared by most Americans. Goddamn. Now, I'm going to show you a couple news segments, but one in particular, a local news segment on Luigi. You're going to be floored as to how even local news is talking about this. It should be a real eye-opener to the health insurance companies. Because when you have, the whole thing about local news is that it's supposed to be like bland and inoffensive mixed with like, here's every local crime that happened. So, like, be scared of getting mugged in the street. Like, that's what local news is. It's like bland, inoffensive stuff with fake personalities reading a script. And then also, here's every local crime, so be afraid to walk outside. That's what local news is. But I'll show you the segment tomorrow. It is a real eye-opener. When basically you have people you wouldn't expect who are kind of like, Luigi, what do you want me to tell you, dog? What do you want me to tell you? Okay, so here, I'll give you some more specifics. And by the way, it's always in the framing, right? Like, there's an old saying, there's lies, damned lies, and statistics, right? And I feel the same way about polling because you can ask the same question in a different way and get a totally different answer, right? So if you say to people, does the government have a responsibility to provide Americans with universal health care? The number would be like 80% say yes. If you say, should we ban private insurance and do government-run healthcare, then people would say no. It'd be a minority. So it's all in like how you frame it. But the thing about this poll is, I believe they were able to do this in sort of like a neutral and objective way. Like it's as close as you can get to like a good way of phrasing this. Ready? Here we go. Believing the health insurance industry is at least partly responsible for the murder of the United Healthcare CEO is not some fringe position. 69% of Americans say health insurance claim denials had a great deal or a moderate amount of responsibility for the killing of CEO Brian Thompson, according to a new poll conducted by NORC at University of Chicago. Nearly as many, 67%, blamed health insurance company profits. The poll also captures a nuance that's sorely lacking in major media coverage, which tends to collapse the issue into two camps: those who condemn the murder versus those who support it. That kind of two-sizes-fits-all framing leaves no room for the view that both the shooter and the healthcare industry share responsibility for the CEO's death. NORC's poll suggests this more nuanced attitude is in fact quite mainstream. The number of respondents who blame the shooter wasn't much higher, 78%, than those who blamed health insurance claim denials, 69%. Do you see what's going on here? It's like, okay, let's make an analogy. If you have a slave kills a slave master, or if we want to like soften it a little bit, somebody who's an indentured servant kills the head of the indentured servant company, right? People would say, yeah, that's murder. That's bad. Murder's bad. We don't like murder. But then they'd also say, is like the nature of the system, did that lead to the killing? People be like, well, yeah. We have slavery, right? Or we have indentured servitude. If you have such a ruthlessly and viciously exploitative system, yeah, there's probably going to be some violence over that. Some people at some point will fight back, right? Maybe the answer is to reform it to not have slavery or not have indentured servitude anymore. So that's a nuance which is like kind of obvious, but is not presented in most polls. So here we go. Let's see if we can understand this chart here. How much responsibility do you think each of the following had for the recent killing of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson? Okay. Denials for healthcare coverage by health insurance companies, 69%. It says it has a great deal or a moderate amount of blame. Wow. Or responsibility, I should say, is the exact word they use. Profits made by health insurance companies, 67%. Wealth or income inequality in general, 53%. Health insurance industry layoffs and job losses, 41%. Personal issues in the CEO's life, 24%. The media, 40%. Political division in the U.S., 45%. The individual who committed the killing, 78%. So in other words, look, I mean, people are correct, right? 78% are saying, yeah, the person who pulled the trigger has the responsibility for the killing of the CEO. Duh. But then right behind that is 69% denials for healthcare coverage by health insurance companies and profits made by health insurance companies right behind it. So Klibenstein says, now compare that with the tsunami of corporate media op-eds and pundits expressing the sparkling insight that murder is wrong. That got me too, man. That got me too. When somebody like writes out some like long ass thing and the core of it is like, I believe murder is wrong. It is bad and wrong. It's like, oh, thank you. Thank you for your amazing insight. We really appreciate it. Episodes like these really show you how much contempt these elite media organs have for the public, which they apparently see as helpless children in need of a preschool-level moral lesson. This is the exact same media paternalism that prevented them from publishing Luigi's manifesto, thinking the zombie-like masses would have no choice but to obey the writings and carry out similar acts of violence. As the NORC poll shows, the vast majority of people know that, yes, of course, murder is wrong. Duh. They also just happen to think there's more to the story than that, and they're right. How can you have an honest discussion about any of this without addressing the Moloch-like industry that profits from denying people health care? It's like talking about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln without ever mentioning the Civil War. Similar to the major media commentary, previous polling had focused on the idiotic question of whether murder was acceptable, eliciting the predictable response that no, it wasn't. So this is one of those polls. Ready? Most voters, 68%, think the actions of the killer against Thompson were unacceptable, while 17% found them acceptable. So in other words, even when you try to ask it in the most like cut and dry, black and white, no room for nuance way, even then nearly 20% were like, I kind of get it. Damn. But as the NORC poll demonstrates, the public's attitudes are far more complex than they're given credit for. A truth I've learned again and again in the past decade or so I've spent a reporter. You can learn a lot if you just shut up for long enough to listen to what ordinary people are saying. In this case, I learned that my own belief that murder is wrong, but the health insurance industry abetted it, is a perfectly mainstream position. Yeah, guys, the reaction that I saw the most, both online and in real life, this was the reaction. I'm curious if you guys agree. The reaction was just like, oh. Murder's bad and wrong, but I don't really care. Like this, like I don't have sympathy, right? I don't have sympathy. In the same way that if the head of the indentured servant company got axed, I'm not going to shed a tear. Or the plantation owner gets killed, it's like I'm not going to shed a tear. So it's more of a sympathy thing than it is. It's not saying murder is okay, murder is acceptable. It's more like, oh, at least it wasn't somebody who had a non-exploitative job, right? That's kind of the reaction. And I got to be honest, I think that's reasonable. I think it's reasonable. People are going to have a hierarchy of moral actions, right? And if this was some single mother of three who works 2 jobs to pay the bills and is desperate to take care of her kids and trying her best to get by, and she got murdered as a casualty in a drive-by or whatever, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, that's so horrible, that's so evil, that's so wrong. If there's some mass shooting at a school, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, that's so evil, that's so horrible, that's so wrong. I might actually lose sleep over that. I might actually think about it. It might actually lead to emotional pain and disturbance. But when you hear that some health insurance CEO exec got offed, it's more of like that's going to happen, isn't it? And I'm not going to lose sleep over this. Because everybody knows how ruthlessly exploitative these companies are. Right? Doesn't mean what Luigi did was moral or ethical or just or correct. It just means the reaction to it is going to be a lot more detached than if this was somebody who worked a non-exploitative job and was a pure victim in every sense of the word, where the default perspective from everybody is, this person should not have been in this position, right? So Klibenstein continues, the major media gaslighting that you're some kind of fringe lunatic if you think or say anything other than, I condemn this, is the real marginal view. That's exactly right, Ken. That's exactly right. They want to ban anybody saying anything other than, murder is bad and wrong, full stop. If you have any other thoughts, they want to cut it off, right? They want to cut it off. And by the way, this is why they arrested that woman in Lakeland, Florida, who she just got a claim denied. She was on the phone with Blue Cross Blue Shield, just got a claim denied, and she said, defend, deny, depose, you guys are next. And they said, that's a terrorist threat, and they arrested her, right? That's what this is. And then you have Seb Gorka, who's going to be like the counterterrorism czar, and he says anybody who expressed sympathy over this with Luigi, that you're all going to be considered terrorists or terrorist adjacent, and they're going to try to infiltrate spaces and spy on people, right? That's what they're going to do. And, okay, well, you're going to be spying on like a tremendously high percentage of the population, because so many normies in my own life, even in real life, were like, well, at least it wasn't a normal person who got killed. That was the reaction. I'm just being honest. That was the reaction. And that's another lesson I've learned. Very often, you're not alone in your beliefs. Certain views just don't have access to the same megaphone that cable news anchors or New York Times columnists have. And then he says, I've included a copy of NORC's polling data, so you could look at the more specifics of it. Shout out to Ken. Great job here, Ken. That really is a wake-up call, or it should be a wake-up call to a lot of people. And like I said, tomorrow we're gonna talk about something similar. I have a couple news segments. One in particular is a local news segment that is just gonna blow your socks off. About the way that they're talking about Luigi now is way more honest than I ever thought would be possible in the media in this country. But there will be a backlash. The empire will strike back, right? I'm sure all the CEOs of the major health insurance companies already like quadrupled their security. I'm sure that the system is going to come down on Luigi with an anvil on his head. I'm sure of all of that. But understand, the views of the public are measured, they're rational, they're logical, they're reasonable, they're complex and nuanced, and that is awesome. It's awesome that it's not just like the dumbass, low IQ, stupid take. Murder is wrong, and that's the end. Don't say anything else about anything ever. Shh, 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 shh. People are past that. People are over that. And I think people deep down know that the reason why they're reacting as they're reacting is because we truly do have organized, systemic violence and aggression against the American public by the health insurance companies. When the whole job of the health insurance companies is to be an unnecessary, rapacious, for-profit, mafia middleman that gets in between you and your doctor and price gouges you on the front end and then tries to deny care as much as possible on the back end. Like, people think you're the criminal. You're the one committing violence. So when there's violence against the CEO of one of these companies, yeah, the reaction is going to be like, what'd you expect, bro? You commit 14,000 crimes on a daily basis, and now there's one crime against you guys, and you want everybody to, throw a parade and break out the across-the-board condemnations with no nuance, no complexity, no intellectual thought behind it. Like, it's just not going to work. Because the more people learn about this, the more they will get the reality, which is, again, this is the only industrialized country that doesn't have one version or another of a universal healthcare system. And the whole health insurance industry is nothing but a giant fraud. It's a con. And there will come a time where we look back in the past and view it as like an indentured servant company. That's how we'll view it. There will come a time where we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that ever existed. A middleman that just gets between you and your doctor and robs you and tries to price gouge on the front end and not pay out on the back end. And how many people died as a result of this? How many people went bankrupt as a result of this? It is shameful. And again, people are onto it. And now this is more front and center than it's ever been since the original Obamacare debate back in 2009. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.